Hello, and welcome to AFSPA Live, our monthly digital broadcast designed to give AFSPA members and eligible federal employees a place to ask questions and get answers about past AFSPA Talks topics, their benefits, and wellness needs. You can ask your question through the chat box on whichever social media platform you're streaming AFSPA Live, YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. If you're not able to join us live, call our toll-free line prior to the broadcast at 888-435-0757 and leave our team a voice message that we may play back and answer live on air. Just tell us who you are and the question you'd like us to answer. I'll see you at the next AFSPA Live.
Hi everyone, welcome to AFSPA Live, a live video broadcast Q&A session that we hold every last Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. My name is Maddie Norton and I'm excited to be moderating the show today. I'm a Senior Communication Coordinator at AFSPA, and today we are discussing financial wellness in the Thrift Savings Plan. Joining us today is Greg Klingler, CEO of GEBA, the Government Employees Benefit Association, and a special guest is Chief Operating Officer of AFSPA, Twanisha Johnson. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Excited to be here.
Of course. Greg, if you want to give us a brief introduction of who you are, we'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. So I started working with actually state employees back in 2003 as a financial advisor. In 2010, I started working exclusively with federal employees. While working at Government Employee Benefits Association. We're a nonprofit who's been helping out the federal community since 1957. And since then, we've developed a number of different things. But one of the things we're going to talk about today is, full service financial planning and education from a financial perspective for federal employees.
Perfect. All right. And before we dive into all of your knowledge about Thrift Savings Plan, we'd love to hear from Twanisha about what AFSPA can offer.
Absolutely. Hi, good morning, everyone. As Maddie mentioned, Twanisha Johnson, Chief Operating Officer of AFSPA. So delighted to be here and to step in for us as co-host in Kyle Longton's shoes. Kyle is our CEO of AFSPA. So in addition to the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, I think some of our members are familiar with our ancillary insurance programs, which offer valuable supplemental standalone programs like dental. We offer that both nationwide and worldwide. We also offer a number of discount programs for vision care. We have a number of partners that make it possible to offer retirement planning, tax consulting, and really just a number of professional services. Financial wellness is also a key component of this, of what we're able to offer through our ancillary offerings. We regularly host webinars and educational sessions to support members and strengthen their financial knowledge. And so I would certainly recommend that folks check out the AFSPA website and our calendar, which updates regularly about sessions that we have available to members to assist them in these efforts. As part of this commitment, we are super proud to partner with GEBA to offer comprehensive wealth management programming. And that's why Greg is here today, just to talk a little bit about that. I'm really excited to be here and to learn a little more from you, Greg, and the ways in which you support our federal workers.
Absolutely. And we're so excited because Greg is an expert on this topic and a multitude of topics for sure. And for anyone wondering what all of the letters mean after your name, Greg, would you mind telling us what they stand for and why is it important to have these certifications for helping federal employees and Inuits?
Absolutely. So I believe the first initials after my name stand for the Masters of Science in Finance, Financial Management in particular, MSM. That, as you can imagine, it's just a master's as an educational standpoint with any other college. Where we get specific, though, is the CFP, so Certified Financial Plan. That requires 6 modules of education: estate planning, insurance, investments, or to name a couple. They're basically like master's level classes, and it culminates in a complete test of all the different topics. And then every 2 years, we're responsible for continuing education, and we are ultimately tested to ensure that we maintain a strong knowledge of that topic, which is financial planning. The CHFEBC, in my opinion, is probably the most important thing when we're working with federal employees, and it stands for Chartered Federal Employee Benefit Consultant designation. It means that we're experts on not only federal benefits, but how to use federal benefits in a financial planning capacity. 16 modules that you have to pass in order to get to the final examination. And then there's a test you have to pass each and every year to ensure that not only we remember the original information, but also the changes that have been made to federal benefits, which we all know that's happening over the last couple of years. And then I guess the last one is the CPFA, Certified Plan Fiduciary Advisor. Number one, it ensures that I'm a fiduciary, which a number of the other letters do ensure that as well. But it makes sure that we're working in the best interest of our members from a legal standpoint. And then lastly, it does make sure that I'm an expert on employer-sponsored programs, like for instance, the TSP or a 401k.
Well, we're glad you have all of the certifications and qualifications to speak with us today, and we're glad to have you as a partner with AFSPA as well. So we'll dive straight into the questions. And Twinisha, I think you're up next.
Yeah. So I know the topic at hand, right? A lot of people are eager to hear a little bit about this thrift savings plan. Some folks are familiar, some are not. Can you tell us a little bit about the thrift savings plan and what it is?
Okay, so the Thrift Savings Plan was created back in 1986 when they transitioned from the old big pensions to the smaller new pensions. And it was designed to basically ensure that the federal employees, they had some skin in the game when it came to saving for their retirement. So this is one of the legs of the three-legged stool, if you will, for your typical federal employee that was hired post 1986. So you have Social Security, you have your pension, and you have your thrift savings plan. So the thrift savings plan in 2026 allows you to contribute up to $24,500. If you're over the age of 50, you can add an additional $8,000 to that. And then there's this weird little change that was made during the Secure Act 2.0, which if you're 60, 61, 62, or 63, that $8,000 actually increases to $11,250. Don't know why it started there. Don't know why it stopped there, but that's the rule. And the one last caveat, if you made more than $150,000 last year, the money that goes into the catch-up provision has to go into the Roth component, not the regular.
Gotcha.
So, but this is a very good thing. This is like the 401k in the private sector, which most people use to really put in the work to create a retirement plan that most people hope to achieve.
Absolutely. And I think we discussed that kind of made it easier for me to understand the TSP, that it's just a 401k for federal employees. And you mentioned Roth. So what is a traditional TSP versus a Roth TSP?
Okay. So the difference is just in taxes and when the taxes occur. All right. So the traditional, and this has been around for a long time, is you put money in, you can write every one of those dollars off on your taxes. And then when you take the money out at some point in the distant future, you have to pay taxes at the ordinary income tax rate.
Gotcha.
Roth kind of flips the script a little bit. Roth, they say, okay, you put your money in and you pay taxes when you put the money in, but then you never pay taxes again. Most people think the Roth sounds better. The truth be told, if you look at it just from a mathematical perspective, as long as your taxes going in don't change from the taxes going out, there is no difference between the traditional and the Roth. Where the results change is when the taxes change. So if you are earning more money now than you will in retirement, you probably want to wait to pay taxes in retirement. So you'd want a traditional side. If you expect to make more money in retirement than you're making now, then you're going to probably want to pay taxes now and not in retirement. And that's where a Roth would make sense. There are two reasons why taxes change. One, let's say the government has a deficit that's quite large and they're trying to figure out a way to plug that hole, and they may raise taxes. As most of you on this call know, we are in a deficit. There's only two ways to fix a deficit: spend less or get more. Most of the time, the successful changes are a combination of the two. So it is not unworldly to think that maybe taxes are going to increase.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. We did get a good question from someone who's trying to learn a little more about TSP investments, how to find out about their TSP investments. Apparently, they enrolled when they first started work, but don't know how to access their balance or how their money is invested at this time.
Okay. So for people who've kind of had the set it and forget it since they started, the government did institute changes that actually put people automatically contributing at least 3% into their TSP. And they also put those people investing in what are called the L shares, which are target date funds that are invested and assigned based on your expected retirement age. So if you didn't make a decision in the hiring process, a decision was probably made for your behalf, especially if you came on board over the last 10 or 15 years. If you want to look at your TSP, and I would advise people, this is not, I'm going to look at it every day.
Right.
That'll make you crazy.
Yeah.
This is long-term investing. You're not going to use it for a long time. So looking at it every year probably makes sense. But if you do want to look at it, tsp.gov, that is a website you typically go to. The last time I checked, when you enroll, they do require you to receive a PIN via the US mail. So if you try enrolling, it's going to take a little bit of time. You have to request it has to come in, and then PIN in. And at that point, you have access. So just understand it'll take you a little bit of time. Once you're in, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're going to be able to see your balances. You're going to be able to see what you're investing in, and you're going to be able to change your current investment strategy with your current assets, as well as your future investment strategy for your future contributions.
Nice. And nice to know that it's secure and that only you can access it. We did get a question from a member saying that their wife was laid off from her federal position as part of the DRPs in October. She isn't planning on returning to the federal workforce anytime soon. So what can/should she do with her TSP?
Okay, so generally speaking, and the age at which she separated, and if you're part of the DRP, your separation was September 30th. The age at which you separate is important to the options that you have available to your TSP. But generally speaking, you can keep it in the TSP, and you can take it out in partial withdrawals, systematic withdrawals, or for full withdrawal. You can roll it into an IRA. So underneath a financial advisor, you could theoretically roll it into a new 401k if you start up with a different company. Or if it makes sense, you could also convert it from a traditional component to a Roth. Now, as we discussed before, traditionally you don't pay taxes when you put it in, you pay taxes when you pull the money out. Roth, you pay taxes when you put the money in, you don't pay any taxes when you pull the money out. Some people, as part of their financial plan, will convert traditional assets to Roth assets, but you have to pay taxes at ordinary income level on whatever you convert. So those are generally the options that you have at your disposal. The TSP Modernization Act that was signed into law in 2017 gave federal employees a lot more access to their money from the TSP. So if you are retired and you are eligible to take money out of your TSP, you have the ability to take out withdrawals 12 times per year or one time per month.
And I think the next question, I think you spoke to it, but maybe there are some other conditions or circumstances that we're not familiar. So how and under what conditions can I access my TSP?
Yep. So the age that you leave federal and government is really, really important. And thank you for bringing up this question, because we've seen people, this is one thing that people unfortunately have gotten wrong over the years. And one thing that advisors don't realize is a rule. So if you separate from federal service prior to age 55, you cannot take access to your TSP without the 10% penalty until 59 and a half. if you end your relationship with employment with the federal government after age 55, that money is accessible immediately, which is good because most IRAs require that 59 and a half requirement. This rule is not a rule for those public safety employees, so police and firefighters effectively, but everybody else, this does remain a rule. So if you ended or severed your government employment prior to age 55, you have to figure out how you're going to fund your retirement until age 59 and a half. And that's really the key. There's one loophole to get access to your money. It's a rule that's called 72T, or equal and systematic payments. And basically what it allows you to do is you're telling the government, hey, look, I'm taking it earlier than my normal retirement age, but I'm not being crazy about it. I'm not going to wipe out my retirement and then be a weight on the government. No, I'm taking a little bit at a time to get me through because I'm retiring a little bit younger. That's effectively what you're doing. And the government makes you pass a calculation in order to prove that. There are technically 3 calculations. If you want to take money out of your TSP early without the 10% penalty, and you severed your employment prior to age 55, there's one calculation. If you roll your money into a IRA, there are 3 calculations which tend to be more attractive for people who are looking to access their money. So, long story short, if you retire before the age of 55, you need to just pay attention to where your money is going to come from.
Absolutely. All right. And you kind of touched on this with our next question, but this is specifically for penalties, I guess. If I get a job that is no longer with the government, can I access my TSP savings, and will they be penalized for doing so?
With the details and the caveats that I've kind of already mentioned, whether you're employed or not has no bearing on your access to the TSP.
Perfect.
That's helpful. How should I decide whether to roll over my TSP into a new employer's 401k?
Yeah, that's a good question, and a question that we've heard a lot because people have taken part of the fork in the road and they're looking for the next phase in their career. So I should start off by saying most 401ks do have plan fees. Plan fees that you are not going to see unless you dig deep into the plan documents, which in my experience, a lot of people don't do. So with that being understood, and the fact that most employers don't cover those plan fees, it's the participant that is typically responsible for those plan fees. The TSP is going to be a lower cost alternative than pretty much any 401k plan that exists out in the marketplace today. So why would you move your money out of the TSP to anything, including a 401k? Well, maybe the new 401k has some really good mutual funds that you think are worth it and are worth the extra fee. That could make sense. Or maybe you think, okay, I'm not really comfortable managing my own assets. I need a professional to actively manage my assets. If those are the reasons why you're moving your money out of the TSP, another alternative it would be a managed portfolio done by a financial planner or an investment advisor. In my experience, most of the time, moving money from a TSP to a 401k does not make a tremendous amount of sense, though.
All right. That's good information for our members to know. What are some common strategies for TSP withdrawals, and why is a 4% per year recommended?
Okay. So the 4% rule was actually created by a gentleman named Bill Bengen back in 1994. He wrote a paper and everybody jumped on it.
Yeah.
So he came up with the 4% by running a Monte Carlo simulation. He came up with if I'm invested 60% in equities, 40% in bonds, and I need my money to last 25 years, and I need it to inflate for inflation each and every year. He came up with 4% with a 91% probability of success. And that's where we came up with the 4% rule. So under his formula, if I have $1 million, it's going to create $40,000 for me in year 1, and it's going to go up based on inflation every year thereafter. He actually just revised his number. I think it was the summertime last year. He ran the numbers and realized, okay, inflation is not necessarily nearly as large of a number as it used to be back in 1994. And he reevaluated and reduced the potential for inflation. And he came up with the safe number being 4.7%. But he said further in his write-up that he did that he would actually recommend a withdrawal rate somewhere in the neighborhood of 5.25 and 5.5. So Bill Bengen just gave everybody a raise.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. So now that $1 million looks more like $55,000 per year indexed for inflation, which is a much easier number to deal with from a financial planning perspective. His plan to do 60-40 is about average for your typical retiree, 60% equities, 40% bonds. So that still tracks.
Gotcha.
Great. Thank you so much. I know you talked a little bit about this earlier, Roth versus traditional TSPs. Is it possible to have a blended Roth and traditional TSP, and is it advisable to do so?
So absolutely possible. In fact, sometimes required. For those people who were making more than $150,000 per year last year, their catch-up has to go into the Roth. You don't have a choice. All TSP matches by the government go into traditional. And if you don't make a decision to go with Roth, the traditional is the default. So absolutely possible. And then the next question, I guess, was, is it advisable? So I'm just going to give you my information. So in my 401k, I do have a Roth component. Now, do I expect me right now to make more money in retirement than I do right now? The answer is no. But did I hedge my bet against potential increases in the tax rate going forward because of the deficit that we see? Yes. So I actually have hedged my bet with a portion of my investments being in the Roth component.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you for sharing that with us to know a little bit more about what you're doing. Kind of the same following this question, how do you convert a TSP account to a Roth TSP account, and would that help with taxes?
Okay. So we have talked about kind of the conversion briefly over the last couple of minutes. So a conversion is taking something that wasn't taxed and turning into something that was taxed, and that conversion is taxable at ordinary income. So there are times where, if this particular conversion makes sense, there are times to do it where it makes the most sense. And most of the time to do that is after you retire, before you start taking withdrawals from your 401k or your IRA, where your earned income is the smallest from a tax standpoint. Most people are not going to want to do a conversion while they're working, and most people are not going to want to do a conversion after they're required to do required minimum distributions at the age of 73. So your sweet spot's kind of right in between there. Now, will it help with taxes initially? No. And the best way to do a conversion is actually to pay the taxes not from your account values, but rather from your savings. It actually makes a lot more sense to do it that way. And then I guess the last part of the question is, in that sweet spot, does it make sense for everybody? The answer is no. Some of the reasons why people do Roth conversions are the Roth is much better to pass money to your heirs, especially after the Secure Act. That's one of the big reasons. The Roth also does not require required minimum distributions, so you don't have to spend the money like you ordinarily would under the traditional guidelines. Required minimum distributions were created because the government got tired of you not being taxed on all this money and they want to get paid. Converting it to a Roth allows them to get paid, but never again.
So what are my options with my TSP once I turn 59 and a half to maximize my savings?
So to maximize your savings, so we're assuming that if you're 59 and a half, obviously, number one, the money's accessible to you, which is great without penalty. But you're also pretty close to retirement, if not already in retirement. As you get close to retirement, you generally want to pull back the risk. The best way I can describe how we kind of define risk, and it's kind of an old metaphor, but it's a good metaphor. 3 buckets. So any money that you're going to spend in the first 5 years, that's money that you want to be safe. You don't want it to be subject to market ups and downs. You don't want to have a situation where you need the money and your market value dropped 30%. So first bucket, 5 years of expenses should be in something safe like the G fund. And then you have years 5 through 10. We look at history, and the probability of losing money over a 5-year period, for every 5 years of gains, there's 1 year of losses over a 5-year period. So can you lose money? Yes. Is it likely? No. So money in the bucket that needs to be used for between 5 and 10 years, a 50-50 portfolio, 50% equities, 50% bonds, typically makes about sense. The last bucket is money that you have earmarked for 10 years plus. Historically, the market has never lost money over a 10-year period. Doesn't mean it won't, but it means it's going to be very sticky, and the odds of losing money are going to be very, very low. The 10-year plus bucket can be invested pretty aggressively in primarily equities. So as we formulate the best kind of combination of fixed, balanced, and aggressive investments, we look at these buckets in theory and put together a portfolio that works for people. For those people who don't want to really do that much research, the L shares that you have within the TSP will do it for you based on the target date that they put into the name of the underlying funds. So if they said 2030, they're going to allocate it based on you retiring at 2030. Once we hit 2030, they'll change it from 2030 to the L Income Fund. For everybody's reference, the L Income Fund right now has about 35% of its investments in equities. So in that last bucket, if you will.
All right. And someone did ask about the G fund. So should I put any of my TSP fund into the G fund after retirement? And if so, what percentage should I do?
Yep. So that first bucket should be in something that's relatively safe. G fund would be a very good place to put it, especially if you're keeping your money inside the TSP. The F fund would be a secondary choice, but I would definitely caution people not to put all of their money in the F fund, because the F fund can lose value. The F fund is going to lose value differently than, let's say, equities. The F fund really, really doesn't like when interest rates go up, because the F fund is invested in corporate bonds. It locks in a rate, and then if prevailing market interest rates go up, the bonds become less valuable. So right now, interest rates are pretty stable. F funds are a pretty decent investment, but the G fund, which is paying in the upper threes, is a solid investment for that first bucket.
No surprise here, more conversion and tax implication questions, right? So the next one here, can I convert my Fidelity investments to my TSP? If yes, how do I do that? And then the third part of this, will I be taxed twice for doing this?
Okay, so we're talking about now putting money from outside investments into the TSP. So provided that they are like titled accounts, so a qualified account or a 401k or an IRA or a SEP, those are retirement accounts. They can go into your retirement account, the TSP. If your Fidelity account's just in a individual account, the answer is no. But I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's an old IRA or it's an old 401k. And yes, you can put the money in the TSP. What you're going to do is you're going to go into the website, download form TSP 60, and that will allow you to roll your old qualified account into the TSP. Last question you asked was, will it be taxed twice? Well, theoretically, it's never been taxed if it's traditional. And it will continue not to be taxed because a transfer or a direct rollover is still not taxed. So a transfer or direct rollover is when the company sends the check to TSP for benefit of your name. If the company sends you the check in your name, you have 60 days to roll it over. I do want to caution people who are rolling money over, you can only do one non-direct rollover per year. The second one becomes taxable. So you always want it made out into TSP, FBO, your name.
All right. And then we got a question, kind of vague, but in your opinion, what would be the best balance to have in your TSP when retiring?
All right. So, Maddie, you know this is a loaded question, and I can't give
Yep.
recommendations, especially if I know the person. But I can talk generalities. All right. So, um, things that define levels of risk: age, risk tolerance, and how quickly you're going to spend your money. How big that first bucket is going to be, if you will. Most federal employees, because they have their pensions and their Social Security, they tend to spend their TSP slower than the private sector 401k people. So because of that, federal employees tend to be able to handle more risk when we look at risk from that definition. In my experience, provided people are not really risk adverse personally, most federal employees find a sweet spot somewhere between 75% equities and 50% equities, with the rest being either cash alternatives, or bonds. Um, Now, the majority of equities, especially in the past, have tended to be large cap. So for your TSP people out there, that's the C fund, the S&P 500. But specific other equities are going to be based on market conditions. More so now than in the past, most experts think that international funds tend to be more well valued than their domestic counterparts. And they also think that small cap and mid cap, so smaller companies, tend to warrant more investment and more attention. So in today's world, as a general comment, somewhere between 75% equities and 50% equities, you're definitely going to be kind of around a base of the S&P 500, but more so now than in the past, probably more money dedicated towards international, emerging market, and small and mid cap stocks.
Okay, another question from a member. I am 57. Should I start rolling my traditional TSP money to a Roth? I hope to retire between the ages of 62 and 67.
Okay. So I know I mentioned the sweet spot on when to do a conversion. Um, if you're still working, which it looks like you are, you have ordinary income that you earn from your job, and if you convert, any dollar that you convert would be added on top of that onto your tax rate, basically. And at some point, generally in the pretty near future, it pushes you into a higher tax bracket. So most of the time in a situation like this, the recommendation would be, okay, wait till you retire, somewhere between 62 and 67. Make sure that your earned income is as low as possible, then start converting below the threshold of the next tax bracket. That's typically what we recommend. Let's see. Now, the question does still, the Roth IRA may not be the best thing for everybody. So I want to be very clear with that. It depends on people individually. If you do want to put money into the Roth and you are still working, you can do so by just dedicating your contributions to the Roth component. And that's absolutely acceptable. Excuse me.
All right. Good for people to know. I'm thankful for our members for submitting questions like this and providing a little more information so Greg can answer to the best of his ability. Our last question is, as I'm preparing for retirement, what factors should I consider when deciding whether to continue my FEGLI?
Okay. So let's just quickly talk about what FEGLI is. So FEGLI is a group term life insurance program, and it's offered by the federal government. It gets more expensive as you get older every 5 years. I have seen a lot of people take FEGLI into retirement, and I can tell you that I've never seen anybody take FEGLI Part B, so the big insurance amount, past their early 70s because it gets too expensive. Now, reasons to take full-blown FEGLI into retirement is if you have some health concerns, that's going to greatly diminish the length of your life. You take whatever you can get and you make sure you protect your family. Now, with that being said, the other conversation that we have that is FEGLI related is, okay, how much money do you have? Many people, as they enter retirement, have accrued a great deal of assets, pension, Social Security, TSP, second house, you name it, and they can self-insure a great deal of the insurable need or potentially all of the insurable need, so they don't actually need insurance. So that's the next question. Do you need it? We generally recommend a financial plan for our members who come through GIBA because we can't give really quality recommendations without knowing you as an individual. And if you have a big TSP and you've chosen the survivor benefit on your FERS pension program or your FSPS pension program, your survivor may not need insurance, which means you may not need to pay for that. GIBA does do financial plans free of charge and no obligation. We start from that point because we do believe that we can't give good recommendations without all the information. So with that being said, question number one, do you need it? Question number two, if you do, is FEGLI the best choice? Do you want something that gets more expensive, or do you want something that stays fixed in nature? Depends on the underlying situation and how long you're actually going to need insurance. But regardless, one of the things that I do recommend is keeping FEGLI basic into retirement. And the reason why is at 65, it'll start reducing, 2% per month. It'll go down to 25% of what it once was, but it's free. It's no cost. So whether you need it or not, free is a good price, right?
It is a good price.
Yeah, and the same calculation goes for FEGLI Part A as well, if you happen to have that. $10,000, it'll go down to $2,500, but it's free. So if you have FEGLI Basic Part A and you don't need insurance, or you do, it makes sense to always keep it going into retirement at the 75% discount.
Wow, I feel like rapid fire questions, right? We were trying to get through as many questions as possible from our members. So thank you so much, Greg, for answering all of those. For those of you tuning in, you may have seen the QR code that popped up. I certainly will encourage you to reach out if you're needing this type of advice and assistance with financial planning. As an AFSPA member, you do have access to these resources and tools and to Greg's knowledge. So please utilize that. But Greg, thank you so much for being here with us. It's a comfort to know that we could just pick up the phone and call on you for this type of support and advice. And you're just so knowledgeable. I started off talking about being so proud of this partnership, and now I think others can see why, right? Yeah. So thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, and if you want to hear more from Greg and more about what GIBA does, definitely check out our latest or one of our latest podcast episodes that we did with Greg, and we talked about GIBA wealth management. So if you wanted more information about how you can invest your money as a federal employee, definitely check that out. That's on our YouTube page if you're watching at AFSPA Cares, or on any of your podcast streaming apps. Otherwise, we have a new episode out that came out this week with Tammy Flanagan with Retire Federal, and we talk a little bit more about retirement and what you can expect and plan for. So check out that as well. 2 great topics. We will be back next month with a Medicare episode, me and Kyle. And so next month is Medicare March, and you can be able to watch AFSPA Live on March 26th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And before we close registration, you can also sign up to join us for our annual meeting, or our AFSPA annual meeting, and learn all about the new updates that we're offering. As the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, we have a keynote speaker from Hinge Health. So definitely check that out. It's offered virtually through Zoom, and we are very excited and preparing for that. Otherwise, you can keep up to date with everything we're offering on our events page, afspa.org/events. And if you want more information about any of the topics we've covered today, I promise you there's a podcast for it, there's an AFSPA Live for it, or even a blog. So definitely keep an eye out on our social media pages for stuff like that. And again, Greg, thank you so much for joining us today and enlightening us with all of your knowledge. And we hope this is super helpful for our members. And we'll see you guys next month.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for watching our broadcast. Join us again the last Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, don't forget to look for AFSPA Cares on all of our social media channels: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and